Well, it's been just under a week since I went to see The Batman at the fan event on Tuesday. And I have to say, I haven't stopped thinking about it. It's the one Batman movie that has just bubbled and boiled in my brain, and I'm always thinking about it at some point during the day, which has not happened with many movies, let alone Batman movies. So, after giving it much thought, I have to say, I think this is my favorite Batman movie. I was kind of hoping it would be going into it based on what I'd heard, but I was still skeptical. But nope. After much pondering and much considering, this is definitely my favorite Batman movie. Not necessarily my favorite Batman with Robert Pattinson in the role, but that's still to be determined and thought about later on. So what is it about this movie that I love so much? Well, that's what we're here to talk about in this review for The Batman. Don't worry, there will be no spoilers for it, except there will be like the last 2 minutes or so. I will go into 1 or 2 spoilers, which when that comes around, I will let you know, and I will say you can leave now if you would like. So let's just start off with this movie in general. I love this noir feel that we have. This is truly a Batman movie we have never seen before. I know we hear that all the time with all these different superhero movies. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I find it hard to believe that a movie is going to be something we've never seen. But this movie is definitely it. We've got the detective, which we have been begging and wanting as fans for so long. Yes, we've gotten glimpses of that before, but we've never really had the chance to prove that Batman is, as we all say, the world's greatest detective. And this movie proves it. Now, it is him just starting out, so he's probably not the world's greatest detective yet, but he's going to get there. We can clearly see that. And the aesthetic of this film it feeds into the movie completely. This movie knows exactly what it is and exactly what it wants to be. And I think a big part of that comes from Gotham itself. Gotham is dark. It's gritty. This is clearly a place you do not want to live in. There's no real hints of, well, this part of it's good and this part of it good, so come on down. No, this is a place you can see from the very beginning you really don't want to live here unless you're lucky enough to be in the top 2%. And for me, I think that's something that the Nolan films, for as good as they are, never quite hit on. And here's why. I love Batman and Robin. Before this one, it was my favorite because it leaned into the whole campiness of the situation. It leaned into the fun comic book aspect of Batman and Robin. And it knew what it was and accepted that. It never tried to be something it wasn't. This movie totally leans into the film noir. It leans into the realism of what a place like Gotham, what a place like this, or a superhero like Batman could actually be like in the real world. Yes, there's hints of comic book aspects thrown in, which is great. We need that. But it never feels like it's out of place. It never feels like you're in a world that couldn't have at one point existed, if not exist somewhere. The Nolan films, I realized, they never knew exactly what they were. They knew they wanted to be more of a realistic take. But yet you always had that aspect, that part of it that stayed firmly in the comic book genre. And I realized that's why these films didn't resonate with me as well as they did with other people. It always was drawing that line, and it wasn't crossing over into one area or the other. And that's why I always felt like there was something off about these films. And I believe that I've hit it on the head with this realization. All right, let's start talking about some of the characters, the actors, and their portrayals. Let's start with Robert Pattinson. He's really good as Batman. This is a movie where he gets to shine. And it's a movie called The Batman. So for people who say, there's not enough Bruce Wayne, or he's not Bruce Wayne, he's the Batman. Yeah, did you read the title of the movie? It makes sense. Now, I will say I've listened to a lot of people talk about this movie. I've watched a lot of reviews. And that's where I admit I'm getting some of my ideas from. But the thing is, they're right. This is about a Bruce Wayne who has not come to terms yet with the fact that there's more to him than Batman. He is the Batman. Thus the title of the film. And I love it. His suit is not as high tech. It's not as advanced as some of the other suits we've seen in the past. And for a moment, that might throw some people off. But think about this. How many stinking suits has he had in the comics? This is just a first version of a suit that down the line we could get in sequels that might look more like the ones that we're used to, or like the ones that maybe we really like. So there's nothing wrong with that. This is a tactical suit, and it works. Somebody mentioned, and it's true, you hear him as he's stomping his boots. It sounds like cowboy boots, and it's great. He scares the crap out of everybody. And clearly he's smart. He's intimidating. He walks into the room. Everybody gets nervous. He doesn't have to do anything spectacular. He doesn't have to throw a punch. And most people know, oh crap, we are screwed. Or there's something really wrong with this guy. And Robert Pattinson leans into that whole idea. He leans into the fact that Bruce is broken. He doesn't know what to do. He totally is not Bruce Wayne yet. He doesn't realize that he has to maintain a secret identity. He has to maintain another illusion. It's kind of like the scene in Batman Begins, where Alfred comes in, throws open the curtains, and tells Bruce, yes, but millionaire playboys are not, when Bruce says bats are nocturnal. Here we see Bruce is just like, yeah, I'm Batman. And I don't want to go anywhere. I'm going to stay here and do what I need to do. He hasn't realized that he has to find a balance yet. And it's great. I think he does a great job in this. I'm looking forward to see where he progresses this character, because I'm sure down the line we will see more of him developing the Bruce Wayne persona of the character. Of course, Bruce wouldn't be complete without his handy and trustworthy and loyal butler, Alfred. If I have one complaint about the movie, it's definitely this part of it. It has nothing to do with Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis is a great Alfred. I just feel like they didn't give him enough time to really grow into the character, to make the character his own. We never got a sense of who exactly is this Alfred. We've gotten hints, but I just felt like they could have gone so much further with this character. And I'm hoping that down the line we might learn a little bit more about him. Maybe he'll grow into the Alfred that many of us know and many of us love. But for this part, yeah, Andy Serkis is good as Alfred. I just feel like he was underused. Then there's Zoey Kravitz as Catwoman. Wow. They really lean into a lot of the Catwoman lore. They combine it. We get the darker tones of her backstory, of her origins that have been redeveloped. It's been rebooted constantly in the comics. But it's not lighthearted. They go full steam with this dark, gritty, this Selina Kyle that has had it really, really rough. And I really feel like we haven't gotten that version of Selina before. We've gotten the secretary who has a tough boss and dies and then comes back and wants revenge with Michelle Pfeiffer. We got the underappreciated hard worker who just wants to help people. I think that was how you could describe it with Halle Berry's a Catwoman. Anne Hathaway, there was a backstory to her. She definitely wanted to do more good, and she felt secluded because of her past, because of the life she was forced to live, which we do get a little bit of that in this movie, but it's definitely a lot darker than there. And then, of course, who could forget the Catwomen from the old Adam West? They were kooky, they were fun. We never really got much of a backstory for them. But you can see the romance, you can see the bond that Catwoman and Batman are starting to share here. Which, that's no spoiler. If you know the comics, you know that they've always been a will they, won't they couple. So we get to see starts of that here. Now, thinking about it, that might happen a little too quickly for some people. Maybe Batman starts falling for Catwoman way too quickly. But it works. It works generally when maybe you think about the fact that Bruce has had no real contact with anybody outside of the criminal element. So for him to have interaction with a woman, it's totally something new, and he's just probably doesn't know how to deal with it. But then let's talk about Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Oh my gosh, he is so good in this. I thought for sure we were going to see very little of this character based on what had been said. But he's in it just the right amount. He's in it enough that he's important, that he helps drive the plot at points, but he doesn't overstay his welcome. He never makes this movie feel like it's too full of villains, too full of characters, like other comic book superhero movies have done in the past. And I will tell you this, I'm looking forward to that Penguin show coming out on HBO Max. I mean, if we get more of this Penguin with this Colin Farrell, playing him just the same way, maybe developing his character more, then we're in for a treat, and it's going to be fun. So fun. I don't think I'm forgetting a villain, am I? Who am I? Of course, Paul Dano as the Riddler. This is a totally different Riddler from what we have seen before. I love Jim Carrey. He was hilarious. I thought the original Riddler in the Adam West was entertaining. Heck, I love the version that we got in the animated series. But they all were just kind of this fun, kooky guy who throws out riddles and does want to hurt people. And of course, in Jim Carrey's case, kill them at times. And I'll admit, I was one of those people that saw the Riddler as kind of a joke. You know, no one to be taken real seriously. But this movie proves us all wrong and shows why fans of the Riddler have been right this whole time. As my buddy Cletus has been trying to tell me for years, and I only just recently started to realize that based on comic lines that I've read. This proves just how deadly and how sick the Riddler can be. Paul Dano, he gives us a totally new version of the Riddler. This is, like I said, a character we have not seen before. This is a version of the Riddler we haven't seen before on the big screen. And I'm looking forward to seeing if we get more information about his background, about his history, so we kind of flesh out the character a little bit more. Now, I do know that there is a novel called Before the Batman where we get more of that for him and more of that for Bruce. I have that on order. Looking forward to reading that. But man, this is a Riddler you just don't want to mess with. You do not want to be on his hit list, because he will find many, many ways to torture and kill you. And it's his scenes that make me not entirely sure who this movie is for or who should go see it. Because I loved it. I thought it was great. I was absorbed into the story. I was absorbed into the characters. But even I had to admit, at times, I'm like, oh, that's a little graphic. That's a little scary. I don't know if young kids who love the Batman are going to want to see this or be able to see it. I'm just not sure. So my recommendation would be, if you haven't seen it already, see it first and determine that for yourself if your kids can see it or not. And finally, we have somebody that I totally forgot was in this movie, and that's John Turado. I think I'm saying that name right. I'm just going to say he's fantastic in this role that he plays. He is solid, he's creepy, he's perfect casting for this role in this world that they've created. And it'll be interesting to see where we go from here with the crime underworld that's developing, with villains coming out of the woodwork, hopefully. I mean, with me, I would love to see a Poison Ivy done well. I mean, I like Uma Thurman, but for this world, I'd love to see their version of Poison Ivy or their version of Mr. Freeze. I know it'd be hard, but I've been wanting another Mr. Freeze on the big screen for a long, long time, because he is my favorite Batman villain. And I think that was another thing about this film. There were so many characters in this movie that we just hadn't seen for so long in a Batman film, and that was one of the reasons I loved it. Or if we'd seen them recently, like Catwoman, they were a different fun, interesting take on them. But let's not forget the police who's in charge here, and that is Jeffrey Wright's Commissioner Gordon. This is a great version of Commissioner Gordon, though we should be honest, he's not commissioner yet. I think he's still a lieutenant. But his interactions with Batman are great. Their lines, they deliver the humor. It comes down to Batman, Commissioner Gordon, and even the Penguin at times are the ones that deliver a lot of the humor here. And he fits right in. All these characters, all these actors just fit in with this world that they've created, and it makes sense. You believe every single aspect of it. The look of Gotham is fantastic. The music, I admit I didn't pay too much attention to the music. What I did hear was amazing. But my favorite thing was hearing tones and instances of the original Tim Burton Batman theme being played. My buddy Clea said there's the Adam West theme being played in there in a much darker, lower tone. But just the fact that I was able to pick up on those, I loved it. But the music didn't take away from the film. It added to it. It added to this mysterious world, this dark underbelly that we were exploring. And the way they did the cinematography, it looked good to me. But there were moments where certain people are looking, whether it's through binoculars or we're looking through a camera. They looked and they made that work, and that was fantastic. Those were things you noticed. But part of the camera work also was when Batman's flying or soaring through the city, as we know he does. It felt like you were there with him. Just like in early days of Spider-Man, where you felt like you were swinging through the cities with Spider-Man. Here you feel like you're flying or you're gliding through the city of Gotham with Batman. And I can't say enough about how great this movie looks, how it sounds. There's just so much good stuff in this movie that it's really hard to find things wrong with it. Though, when you think about it, there are some things, but like I've said, those are just nitpicks. And overall, they can easily be overlooked because so much of this movie is fantastic. I do want to point out one moment that I don't hear people talking about, and this was the moment where I started to really think, okay, yeah, I'm going to love this movie. First, it started off with the way the movie opens. The tones totally contradict each other. You're expecting one thing and you get something else. And I laughed. It was just funny. But then you have Batman do a voiceover coming on. And it sounded like Rorschach from The Watchmen. And I love Rorschach. At that moment, I know, oh, if this is how the rest of the movie is going to be, then this movie is going to be fantastic. And I was not wrong in that. This Batman feels like Rorschach to me. Just the way he speaks, the way he acts at times is great. And maybe that's not the best thing, since Rorschach is crazy and psychotic. But Batman, at this point, is kind of crazy and psychotic too. They're similar. And I just love that they incorporated this into the movie. And it's not something I think a lot of people have picked up on. So, overall, I love this movie, if you haven't been able to gather that from my review. This is a movie you definitely have to go out and see on the big screen. Especially if you can see it in IMAX. Because I almost forgot. The sound, just the pounding of it, it works fantastic in IMAX. You feel every punch. You feel like everything is coming at you. And the moment that Batmobile lights up and takes to the street, oh, I was in. I am not a fan, really, of these Batmobiles that are more realistic. I have loved the Batmobiles that have the wings on the back and the Batmobile from the animated series. Those were the ones that I grew up with. Those were what I would think of when I thought of the Batmobile. It wasn't the Tumbler. The Tumbler was not the Batmobile to me. But this is fantastic. This is a car. It's a muscle car. And there's aspects of the Batman-ness to it with the wings a little bit. But I was just enthralled by it. I loved it. It fully embraced the more realistic side, like I mentioned early in this review. And that's what I loved about it. But seeing it driving and just the chase scene that it's in is fantastic. Seeing Batman drive the car is great. I definitely recommend, if you can, spend the money and see this movie in IMAX, because it is worth every penny you pay. So, my final review and my final rating still remains Mentor, because you have to see this movie. I can't say that enough. I loved it. Like I said, new favorite Batman movie, and I cannot wait to see what they do with this franchise moving forward. Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, feel free to leave or shut off, but always remember, enjoy what you love, read what you love, and let's all work for a better fandom. I will see you guys next time. Now, for those of you who remain, I'm assuming that you've seen the movie or don't care about it. There's two specific moments I want to talk about. Well, we'll talk about three. One is the whole reveal that Catwoman is Falcone's daughter. As soon as that started, as soon as she started to mention stuff, I knew that was going to happen. I'm kind of a little annoyed that they used that same cop-out again, but I did some research, listened to some people. It was in the comics at one point, so that's fine. Let's go with that. I like the mystery. I like the idea that it was Falcone who ordered the Waynes to be murdered because Thomas needed his help for one thing and was upset with the way it was handled. And it proves that Thomas was actually a nice guy. And I like the fact that this is a mystery that Bruce is trying to solve. And maybe with this resolution, he might become more of a Bruce, a better Bruce who will go out and try to help bring back his family's legacy in a much grander way. Also, we do have to talk briefly about that final act scene, the whole water and the Riddler's goons destroying the dams and all that fun stuff. There have been some people who don't like it. I thought it was good. It made sense, it reminded me of some of Nolan's stuff, and it worked. I feel like as Batman fans, we expect some big grandioso thing at the end. And this worked. We got to see Batman become Batman more in the way that we know him. And I was worried that we weren't going to get one when he threw the Riddler in prison real quickly there at the end. I was like, what, no big confrontation? That's what I was hoping for. And we kind of got it. But finally, let's talk about the Joker reveal at the end. That one really annoys me. Not because it's the Joker, not because of what it can lead to, but I am not a fan of the Joker. I'm not a fan of the Green Goblin with Spider-Man. I'm not a fan of these characters that everybody loves. That's constantly done. I'm like, come on. Can we do something else? Can we do a different villain? There's so many characters in any hero's rogues gallery. Why do we have to keep coming back to the same ones? And I was really hoping they wouldn't touch on Joker in this movie. They did. They did it differently. It worked. I wasn't thrilled about it. But if we keep him in prison, if he's not involved in the second movie, and maybe in the third movie in the trilogy, then he comes forward, I can deal with that. I just want other villains besides the Joker to take front and center in Gotham, to battle the Batman. So, for the rest of you, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the Batman in all its dark and glorious noir feels. How am I crazy, or is this the best Batman movie ever? Let me know what you think. And is there something that I didn't notice that you did? I mean, I thought about the Rorschach thing. It seems like nobody mentioned it. Is there something that you noticed that nobody else is mentioning? Let me know down below. And as always, again, enjoy what you love, read what you love, and let's all work for a better fandom. I'll see you next time.